While June has certainly shown some success at the box office, unfortunately, it is down about 16% from June 2013's domestic record with a current take of $1.04 billion. And before we get into the June releases, in fact, the top 3 highest grossing films of the year are all comic book films, with X-Men Days of Future Past at number 1 with $714 million, Captain America the Winter Soldier at number 2 with $711 million, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at number 3 with $704 million worldwide, thereby showing the very strength of the comic book genre. Now, the first big June release we had is Edge of Tomorrow with a budget of $178 million. The expectations were high, and the fact of the matter is the marketing did not appeal to everyone, and this very concept was not of a established franchise, and therefore it only opened to $28 million domestically, and its current domestic take is $86 million, but at the same time it has over $320 million worldwide, showing that this was in a sense a success. A lot of people are comparing this to Pacific Rim, which domestically made about $100 million and worldwide made about $400 million, and Pacific Rim now has a sequel. So I don't think that it is an utter failure as some people are trying to say. Unfortunately, upon its release, it was beaten by The Fault in Our Stars, which opened to a whopping $48 million, accumulating $197 million worldwide, 112 which are from domestic territories, of course. Relative to a $12 million budget, this is a fantastic gross. If you take a look at the very demographic that it was trying to strike in terms of teenagers, I think that The Fault in Our Stars is certainly a successful film. Of course, not comparable by any means to, let's say, Twilight or even The Hunger Games. But it really was the following weekend that was very intriguing because of the fact that there were 2 large sequels being released, the first of which is 22 Jump Street, which opened to $57 million domestically, far greater than the original, which opened to $36 million. And the domestic take that 22 Jump Street has is $146 million relative to the original, which had $97 million in its first 20 days. And worldwide, 22 Jump Street has already outgrossed $200 million and is soon to outgross the original film. And 22 Jump Street could go on to gross over $250 million worldwide. And what made this weekend so significant was the fact that both the sequels being released had such positive word of mouth. And the second film that was released was How to Train Your Dragon 2, which opened to $49 million, in fact behind 22 Jump Street, and a mere $6 million ahead of what the original How to Train Your Dragon film opened to back in 2010. Unfortunately, How to Train Your Dragon 2 hasn't performed as expected. In under 3 weeks, its domestic take is less than what the original's was by almost $10 million, and worldwide it has $234 million so far. The original managed to get $494 million, and while the expectations for How to Train Your Dragon 2 were at least north of $550 to $600 million, I think outgrossing the original at this point is going to be a difficult task. Despite the fact that animated films tend to perform really well in the long run, I still think that about $400 million or $450 million is where How to Train Your Dragon 2 will stay. And the following weekend we had 2 relatively smaller films, the first of which was Jersey Boys, directed by Clint Eastwood. It only opened to number 4 with $13 million, and yet it somehow managed to make about $30 million domestically and a total of $34 million worldwide, which relative to its $40 million production budget certainly cannot be classified as a success. I think it will just about break even, but ultimately cause the studio a loss because of marketing costs. The other film that came out this weekend was Think Like a Man 2, the sequel to Think Like a Man, which made $96 million worldwide. And while Think Like a Man 2 did not open to the $33 million that the original did, rather it opened to $29 million. It's currently made about $52 million worldwide, $51 million of which is from domestic territories alone, and I don't think it will outgross the original. I think it could make, say, $80 to $85 million through the end of its run, or maybe even less, around the $70 million mark. But relative to a $24 million budget, I think that's still pretty good for the kind of film that it really is. And on the final weekend of June, we had Transformers: Age of Extinction, and the fact of the matter is, it is undoubtedly going to be one of, if not the highest grossing film of the year. It opened to a whopping $100 million domestically on opening weekend, higher than 4 of the films that managed to cross the $90 million mark on opening weekend, making it the highest opening weekend of the year so far. Although its opening weekend is a tidbit behind that of Revenge of the Fallen, which had $108 million. Nonetheless, in under a week, it's made $128 million domestically, and while its domestic take might even be the lowest of the franchise by the end of its run, it could probably make between $300 and $350 million domestically at most. At the same time, worldwide is where the film really succeeds, and it's the foreign territories that really aid the Transformers franchise. It currently has $412 million worldwide, and I think by the end of its run, it could easily reach the billion-dollar mark, as did Transformers: Dark of the Moon, which managed to make it to $1.1 billion. While this might not outgross the third entry of the franchise, I certainly believe that it is a success enough, and the Transformers franchise, despite the fact that a lot of people don't like it, they still go to see it anyway, and it really does perform well in the grander scheme of things, and $1 billion is certainly in sight for this film, and definitely the crown of the highest grossing film of 2014, at least for now, or maybe by the end of the year itself. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing where the second half of the year takes us in terms of the box office, especially towards fall, and even a few films here and there in July and August. And now it is time to crown the box office bomb and the box office boss. The box office bomb, unfortunately, has to go to Jersey Boys. While the expectations were not high for the film or for the box office of the film, at the same time, the other films really managed to step it up and outperform Jersey Boys. It's the only film that hasn't yet made back its budget, and it's had a couple of weeks to run in theaters. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do that well, and the box office boss, undoubtedly, is Transformers: Age of Extinction. Despite the fact that I'm disappointed saying that because of the fact that I was not a fan of the film, I can't deny the worldwide success that the franchise has become, and the future of the franchise, from a monetary perspective at least, is in safe hands.